You know, I've lived long enough to see fortunes rise and fall, empires built and burned, and people chase success until they lose their souls in the process. And I'll tell you something you might not expect from an investor. Money, strategy, and discipline mean nothing if you don't put God first. Because without a moral compass, without gratitude to something higher than yourself, every victory becomes hollow. The world teaches you to hustle, to grind, to push for more. But if you forget who gave you the breath to fight, you'll find yourself lost. No matter how much you win, you can have all the money in the world and still wake up feeling bankrupt inside. That's the paradox most people never see until it's too late. They spend years chasing titles, cars, numbers, applause, but when the noise fades, they realize they built their identity on sand. Success without purpose is just noise. It's movement without meaning, progress without peace. You see, the world has convinced you that achievement equals fulfillment. But here's the truth. Without God at the center of your success, every win becomes a whisper. Every milestone becomes another reason to ask, what now? Because nothing external can fill an internal void. You can't out-earn emptiness. You can't outwork spiritual starvation. When you put God first, you give your success a soul. You give your journey direction. You start seeing work not as a burden, but as a blessing. You stop grinding for validation and start working from conviction. The difference is everything. The person chasing worldly success is always exhausted because their value depends on what they produce. The person who puts God first walks with peace because they know their value is already written before they achieved anything. That mindset doesn't just change how you work. It changes how you live. It makes your ambition cleaner, your goals clearer, and your heart calmer. Let me tell you, the most dangerous thing in life is not failure. It's success without purpose, because failure humbles you, but empty success blinds you. It makes you think you're in control when you're not. It makes you believe you don't need faith because you have fortune. That's when life starts falling apart quietly. That's when you realize money can buy comfort, but it can't buy peace. Influence can get you attention, but it can't give you inner satisfaction. Every empire built without God eventually crumbles, not because of lack of skill or intelligence, but because it lacks soul. The secret most people miss is that putting God first doesn't slow your success. It strengthens it. It aligns your ambition with wisdom. It adds depth to your drive. You start focusing on building something that outlives you, a legacy, not just a lifestyle. You stop working for applause and start working for purpose. And ironically, when you do that, success starts chasing you. Doors open that hard work alone couldn't unlock. People are drawn to the authenticity that comes from someone who leads with purpose instead of pride. You've probably seen it. People who look like they have everything yet walk around restless, angry, and lost. That's what happens when the soul is starving while the world applauds the outer victory. You can't feed your spirit with what was never meant to nourish it. The truth is, no amount of success can compensate for a disconnected soul. When you remove God from your journey, your achievements become hollow victory, shiny but shallow, impressive but temporary. You might gain the world but lose yourself in the process. But when you build your foundation on faith, you stop chasing success like a desperate runner. You start attracting it like gravity. Every effort becomes guided. Every win becomes gratitude. You stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what can I give? And that shift, that's where fulfillment begins. Because success with purpose isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you contribute. It's about leaving behind something that points others upward, not just forward. It's the difference between being remembered and being respected. So here's the hook. Every day you wake up, you're either chasing noise or chasing meaning. One fades when the applause stops. The other grows stronger when the lights go out. The real question is, which one are you living for? In a world drowning in distraction, faith becomes the only true focus. Everywhere you look, there's noise notifications, opinions, endless comparisons. People are chasing clarity and chaos, trying to make sense of a world that rewards speed over stillness. And yet, the answer isn't found in working harder or thinking faster. It's found in faith because faith creates focus in a distracted world. It gives your ambition, direction, and your discipline purpose. Without it, you're just reacting to life instead of leading it. Faith isn't weakness, it's the highest form of wisdom. It allows you to see beyond the moment, to trust the process when the path looks uncertain. That's something logic alone can't do. Most people confuse busyness with purpose. They fill their schedules, but not their souls. They measure progress by movement, not meaning. That's why so many high achievers end up feeling lost. They've mastered efficiency but forgotten alignment. Faith is what anchors you when everything else tries to pull you away. It gives you a compass when the map disappears. It teaches you patience when your plans are delayed, and strength when your confidence wavers. The world will tell you that you're in control, but faith reminds you that true control begins when you learn to surrender what you can't change. Faith doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It stabilizes you within it. You begin to realize that chaos isn't your enemy. It's a test of your focus. The reason most people crumble under pressure is because they rely solely on sight. They believe only what they can see, touch, and measure. But sight is limited. Faith expands your vision. It allows you to see opportunity where others see obstacles, to keep walking when logic says turn back. When you put faith first, your focus becomes unshakable because it's no longer attached to circumstances. It's rooted in conviction. Distraction is one of the devil's most effective tools. If he can't destroy your potential, you'll dilute your focus. You'll start doubting what you once knew. You'll start comparing your journey to someone else's highlight reel. You'll start trading consistency for comfort. That's why faith matters, because it brings you back to center when everything around you tries to pull you off course. It whispers, stay the course. Keep your eyes up. Your timing is coming. And that whisper, that still small voice, becomes louder than every noise around you. When you truly trust it, faith also transforms how you handle failure. Without it, failure looks final. With it, failure becomes feedback. You start to see setbacks as setups, disappointments as redirections. You stop panicking when doors close because you trust the one who controls the hallway. That mindset alone separates leaders from followers, visionaries from victims. Faith teaches you that what's delayed isn't denied. It's developing you. That's the kind of focus that makes you unstoppable, because you no longer depend on perfect conditions to keep going. You move forward because you believe, not because you see. Here's the truth. Most people overlook. The greatest clarity doesn't come from seeing everything. It comes from trusting the right thing. Faith removes the clutter of worry, the fog of fear, the weight of control. It allows you to breathe when life feels heavy. It helps you stay calm when everyone else is panicking. It keeps you focused not just on what you're doing, but on why you're doing it. When you start leading with faith, you stop chasing every opportunity and start choosing the ones that align with your purpose. You begin to work with peace, not pressure. So here's the hook. The world may reward those who move fast, but it belongs to those who move with faith. You can outthink others for a while, but only faith will help you outlast them. The most focused people aren't those who see every step. They're the ones who trust every step. When you lead with faith, distractions lose their power. You stop being controlled by the noise and start being guided by something divine. That's when focus stops being something you chase. It becomes something you carry. The higher you climb, the easier it becomes to forget what lifted you. Success has a way of making people forget the soil they grew from, the people who helped them, and the grace that sustained them when no one was watching. But humility, that quiet strength, keeps you grounded when the applause grows louder. Humility opens doors that pride keeps closed. It allows you to see life from a higher perspective, not because you're above others, but because you learn to kneel. There's power in knowing that you don't have to shout to be heard, that real confidence doesn't need validation. The most intelligent people I've met in my life weren't the ones obsessed with proving they were right. They were the ones humble enough to keep learning even after they'd succeeded. Humility doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less often. It's the awareness that your success is not yours alone. Every step forward came from a mix of grace, timing, opportunity, and effort. And that recognition keeps your heart soft, even when your results are hard-earned. Pride blinds you. Humility sharpens your vision. When you're humble, you listen better, learn faster, and connect deeper. People trust you not because of your position, but because of your presence. They can feel when your ego is in the room, and they can feel when your spirit is leading instead. I've seen brilliant minds crumble because they mistook arrogance for confidence. They stopped listening. They stopped growing. They thought success meant they no longer needed advice. And that's where the fall begins, not in failure, but in forgetting. Humility, on the other hand, builds resilience. It reminds you that you're still a student no matter how much you've mastered. When you stay humble, feedback doesn't offend you. It refines you. Challenges don't break you. They teach you. You stop fearing mistakes because you understand they're part of the design, not a disruption of it. There's a reason why humility attracts opportunities. People love to help those who don't act like they already know everything. When you carry yourself with quiet confidence and a teachable spirit, doors start opening without you even knocking. That's the paradox of success. The more you think you deserve everything, the less you receive. The more you acknowledge you're still learning, the more you gain. Pride says, I've arrived. Humility says, I'm still growing. And growth is what keeps success alive. Without humility, achievement becomes a cage. You start protecting your image instead of improving your reality. You start chasing status instead of substance. Humility also strengthens your leadership. People don't follow titles. They follow authenticity. They follow leaders who admit mistakes, who listen before they speak, who treat everyone with the same respect, whether they're in the boardroom or sweeping the floor. That's real influence. Influence born from integrity. The humble leader doesn't need to dominate the room because they already own their piece. They don't speak to impress. They speak to impact. And when you lead like that, people don't just follow your direction. They trust your heart. The world teaches you to shine so bright that others can't ignore you. But humility teaches you to shine so purely that others can feel you. You don't need to be the loudest in the room when your work speaks louder than your words. You don't need to prove your worth when your presence already does. That's the quiet magic of humility. It's power under control, strength with softness, confidence without arrogance. It allows you to win gracefully and lose honorably. So here's the hook. The moment you start thinking you're too good to learn is the exact moment life begins teaching you a painful lesson. Every time pride steps in, growth steps out. But when humility leads, favor follows. The humble don't need to chase success, they attract it. Because while pride builds walls, humility builds bridges, and those bridges take you places talent and ambition alone never could. Gratitude is one of the most powerful forms of intelligence. It changes how you see, how you think, and how you respond to life. The truth is you can't control everything that happens to you, but you can always control the meaning you attach to it. And when that meaning is rooted in gratitude, even pain becomes a teacher. Gratitude turns pressure into power. It transforms obstacles into opportunities and failure into fuel. Most people spend their lives complaining about what's missing instead of appreciating what's present. And that's why they never feel fulfilled, no matter how much they achieve. Gratitude doesn't just change your mood. It rewires your mind to recognize abundance instead of lack. When you live with gratitude toward God, you stop looking at life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something that happens for you. Every challenge becomes a classroom. Every delay a lesson in patience. Every setback a signal to grow. Gratitude gives you perspective. It reminds you that even when things don't go your way, they're still working for your good. It's easy to be thankful when life is smooth, but true strength shows when you can say thank you in the middle of the storm, because gratitude isn't about ignoring your pain. It's about acknowledging that pain doesn't have the final word. It's about trusting that the process has purpose even when you can't yet see it. I've met people who have everything, wealth, fame, opportunity, yet live in a constant state of dissatisfaction. They complain more than the ones who have little because they've trained their minds to see what's missing instead of what's miraculous. Gratitude, on the other hand, multiplies what you have. When you're grateful, you see possibilities where others see problems. You attract solutions instead of excuses. You stop chasing more because you realize you already have enough to build something meaningful. Right where you are, gratitude gives you emotional balance. In a world addicted to comparison, it takes your focus off what others have and puts it back on what truly matters. Your growth, your health, your relationships, your purpose. Pressure is inevitable. Life will test you, stretch you, and sometimes even break you. But gratitude is what keeps you from collapsing under the weight. It's what allows you to breathe when everything feels heavy. It turns anxiety into awareness, fear into faith. The moment you choose gratitude, your energy shifts. You stop fighting the moment and start flowing with it. You realize that even your worst days gave you something valuable. Wisdom, resilience, empathy. Gratitude takes your scars and turns them into strength. That's not just philosophy. That's survival at a higher level of consciousness. Every successful person eventually learns that gratitude isn't passive. It's a discipline. You have to practice it daily, especially when life doesn't make sense. Because gratitude is a mindset that must be chosen before it becomes natural. It's easy to be thankful when the door is open. But real growth happens when you can still say thank you when the door closes. Gratitude doesn't wait for conditions to improve. It improves your condition no matter what. It's what transforms a breakdown into a breakthrough. The real secret is that gratitude keeps you aligned with grace. When you live with a grateful heart, opportunities come easier, people respond better, and your spirit stays lighter. You stop forcing outcomes and start flowing with divine timing. You realize that everything you have, every breath, every chance, every lesson is a gift, not a guarantee. That realization creates unshakable peace because when you are grateful, you are grounded. So here's the hook. Gratitude isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about seeing perfection in everything that happens. The person who practices gratitude every day becomes unstoppable, not because their life is easy, but because their perspective is strong. You can't defeat someone who's thankful for the fight. Gratitude turns the weight of life into the reason you grow stronger. It turns pressure into power. And that's where transformation truly begins. Ambition without direction is like a powerful engine with no steering wheel. It moves fast, but crashes hard. That's what happens when your goals are driven by ego instead of wisdom. The world glorifies ambition, but rarely does it teach alignment. Everyone wants to rise, but not everyone asks what they're rising for. Aligning your ambition with God's wisdom doesn't make you smaller. It makes your purpose sharper. It takes your energy and channels it in a direction that builds, not just burns. You start moving with clarity instead of chaos. And that's when everything begins to shift, the moment you stop chasing what looks good and start pursuing what's right. Your life transforms from noise into harmony. Ambition alone can make you rich, but only alignment makes you fulfilled. You see, there's a difference between success and significance. Success feeds your ego. Significance feeds your soul. When your ambition is guided by divine wisdom, you stop chasing approval and start chasing impact. You stop asking, how can I win? And start asking, how can I serve? That shift doesn't weaken your drive, it refines it. You still want to build, to create, to achieve, but now your goals are connected to something eternal. You're not just working for recognition, you're working for revelation. That's the kind of motivation that doesn't fade when life gets difficult. When you align your ambition with God's wisdom, you make decisions that last. You stop taking shortcuts because you understand that not every open door is meant for you. Sometimes divine wisdom closes a door not to punish you, but to protect you. And if your ambition isn't aligned, you'll see rejection as failure. But when it is aligned, you'll see it as redirection. That's what alignment does. It gives you peace and patience. It gives you the strength to wait without quitting. Because when you know your calling, you no longer measure your success by how fast you move, but by how right your moves are. Most people are chasing success on their own terms. They want control. They want credit. They want speed. But speed without direction leads to burnout. Alignment brings peace, even in pursuit. It's the difference between forcing progress and flowing with purpose. You no longer need to manipulate outcomes because you trust timing. You stop hustling from a place of fear and start building from a place of faith. That's when your energy changes, your confidence becomes quieter, your focus becomes deeper, and your results become stronger. People can feel when your success is rooted in something higher. It carries a calm authority, not desperation. Ambition guided by ego says, I must have more. Ambition guided by wisdom says, I must become more. And that distinction changes. Everything, the first kind of ambition creates pressure. The second creates peace. When you align your goals with God's wisdom, your wins don't control you, they complete you. You start seeing business, relationships, and opportunities not as trophies, but as tools to fulfill a greater mission. The most powerful people in the world aren't just ambitious, they're aligned. They understand that chasing everything means catching nothing. And that true greatness comes from focusing on what truly matters. And here's what most people miss. Alignment doesn't make the road easier. It makes it meaningful. You'll still face challenges, delays, and doubts. But when your ambition is anchored in faith, those challenges refine you. Instead of breaking you, you can lose a deal and still keep your peace. You can wait longer and still believe in the outcome. Because when your direction is right, the distance doesn't scare you. You're no longer chasing success. You're walking with purpose. So here's the hook. The world will always tell you to dream bigger, but God will whisper, dream better. Because a dream without wisdom is just a wish. When your ambition aligns with divine wisdom, you stop running after the world and start walking in your destiny. And when you walk in destiny, you don't compete, you complete. You don't chase, you attract. You don't burn out, you break through. That's the quiet, unshakable power of alignment. Ambition with direction, purpose with peace, success with soul. When you put God first, everything else begins to fall into place with a kind of order that human logic can't create. Life stops feeling like a puzzle missing pieces and starts feeling like a path that's unfolding exactly as it should. It doesn't mean the road becomes easy. It means you finally understand why it's worth walking. When God becomes the foundation, chaos loses its control over you. You stop living in reaction to circumstances and start living in response to purpose. You wake up with direction, move with peace, and rest without anxiety. Because when you let God lead, you no longer have to force outcomes. You learn to trust divine timing. There's something powerful that happens when you stop trying to control everything and start surrendering. You begin to see the bigger picture, how the losses were lessons, how the delays were protection, how the rejections were redirections. You realize that everything you thought was falling apart was actually falling into alignment. That's the difference between a life built by fear and a life built by faith. Fear makes you grasp for control, but faith teaches you to release it. And the irony is the moment you surrender to God's plan, you gain more clarity, more balance, and more strength than you ever did while trying to control everything yourself. Putting God first doesn't mean neglecting your ambition. It means refining it. You stop chasing what looks good and start pursuing what's right. You stop seeking temporary satisfaction and start building eternal significance. The moment you put God at the center, your goals, relationships, and priorities naturally find their place around that center. It's like tuning an instrument. Once the keynote is right, every other sound begins to harmonize. Without that anchor, life plays out of rhythm. You might still make progress, but it won't bring peace. It'll sound loud, but feel empty. When you put God first, peace becomes your default, not your reward. You stop panicking when things don't go your way because you understand they're going His way. That mindset changes everything. You no longer measure success by speed or size, but by alignment and integrity. You begin to operate with quiet confidence, knowing that if something is meant for you, nothing can take it away. And if it's not, no amount of striving can force it to stay. That's real freedom. When your heart rests, even while your hands work. Many people are exhausted not because they're doing too much, but because they're doing everything without divine order. They're running after results that were never assigned to them, chasing timelines that were never meant for them. When you put God first, you stop confusing motion with meaning. You work with purpose instead of pressure. You stop competing and start creating. You stop comparing and start becoming. You begin to live from fullness instead of for validation. Every action becomes intentional. Every decision becomes guided. You're no longer just surviving. You're flowing. The beauty of putting God first is that it gives you an unshakable center in a world that's always shifting. When storms come, and they always do, you don't collapse. You bend, but never break. You might stumble, but you don't stay down because your stability isn't built on outcomes. It's built on faith. You can face uncertainty with confidence because your trust isn't in the plan, it's in the planner. You no longer need to see the whole staircase to take the next step because you've learned to trust the one who built it. So here's the hook. Life isn't about balancing everything. It's about prioritizing the right thing. The moment you put God first, everything else finds its proper place. Your focus sharpens, your heart steadies, your path clears. You stop chasing what's fleeting and start walking in what's fulfilling. Because when God is first, confusion ends, chaos calms, and success becomes sustainable. You don't have to force what's already aligned. You just have to trust it. And when you do, you'll discover that putting God first doesn't just change your circumstances. It changes you. At the end of your life, nobody will care about your portfolio or your profits. They'll remember your integrity, your kindness, your faith. I've learned this the hard way. Life is not about accumulation. It's about alignment. So align yourself with what's right, what's eternal. When you put God first, everything else finds its proper place. Success, peace, relationships, all of it. You want to win. Start there. Because the smartest decision you'll ever make isn't the one that grows your wealth. That's the one that grows your soul.